Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founder of Bahia Bowls, Ben Casey. Ben, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks for being in studio.
Thank you for having me.
So you drove up 2 hours from the Naples area.
Yep.
All the way to Tampa just to come to hang out with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Love Tampa.
Cool.
Love the studio.
I love it too. Thanks for being in. So anyway, Bahia Bowls. Obviously, there are so many concepts like that, but I would love to hear how you got started and what makes you guys different.
Yeah, sure. So we started the concept back in 2017 with a family friend. So me and him, we were looking to do something in the area, and the only requirement was that it was something the community didn't have yet. Mm-hmm. So initially, we were, believe it or not, looking at bagels, because it was something that really New York style bagels weren't there yet.
Right.
We really quickly decided that might be a little too labor intensive, so we switched gears, and this acai thing was starting to take off. Mm. So we figured we had the 1,400 square foot space that we were looking at. It'd be perfect for this. There was nothing around, so we just went for it. And at the start, it was way simpler, just 2 types of bowls and 6 smoothies and some coffee, and that was it. But since we've expanded the menu a lot, obviously amped up the design and the whole brand overall, and launched the franchise program.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is back in 2017.
Yes.
Was this the first business venture for you and Van?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
So you had that nervous but exciting entrepreneurial spirit, but we call it an entrepreneurial seizure. If you're familiar with Michael Gerber's book, The E-Myth, where, just one day you have this idea like, I've got to do a business.
Yeah.
And there's no turning back.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what was life like starting out?
Oh, man. I mean, I was in the store a lot, right? So that was the whole thing was I was running the day-to-day for the first location for a while. Okay. So I was in there 16-hour days, a lot of days, just making it work and figuring out the operation, working out the kinks and everything like that. It was a lot, but it was good. A huge learning experience, and at the end of the day, I just didn't want to work for anybody else.
Yeah, cool.
Thing, so.
What did you guys decide on? Okay, how are we going to be different? What was the big difference for you guys?
From the start, it was more, let's simplify this process, because back, 6-7 years ago, acai bowls, we were going to a lot of places to see them, and I was finding the ordering process very difficult as somebody who was coming into it, with no prior knowledge of acai bowls, and just figuring out, they'd have 20 different bowls on the menu, and there's just slight differences between all the different bowls and different variations, and I didn't even know what acai was. Right. So we came in, but once you try it, it's great. It tastes awesome. It's fresh fruit, and so we said, let's simplify this to start. The people in our community have never seen this before. Let's make the ordering process really simple. And that was where we started. We perfected the acai recipe. We made a couple simple smoothies. So it was 1 acai bowl, 1 pitaya bowl. That's what we started with, and 6 smoothies. Okay. And just a heavy emphasis on customization. We had Nutella, peanut butter, cookie butter, and extra fruit and that kind of thing. So we just put a heavy emphasis on order it the way it is and add what you want to it or take off what you want. And then we went from there. Now, since then we've expanded into some food options with salads, wraps, and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And now we're a little differentiated in the fact that we try to be more of a meal replacement. We pitch our acai bowls and the salads and wraps is more of a meal replacement. We don't want to be competing with Haagen-Dazs and other, places that might be considered a treat or dessert category. We want to be firmly in that fast casual meal replacement, competing for customers with Chipotle and Panera and that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great alternative. And so you guys started in 2017. You opened your first company owned in the Naples area, right? And then
in Estero, yeah.
In Estero. Yep. And then you opened a second one.
Yeah, in Cape Coral.
Okay.
Yeah. So we tested out a bit of a different footprint, different market. Much instead of 1,400, went to 1,000, almost 1,100 square feet. Laid it out a little differently, but it's a much smaller dining area, and just to see if that could work in a different, more on the go market.
How'd that go?
great. Really busy store to this day.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then you open a third company owned before you franchise?
No, we started franchise. We were opening franchises at that point. We opened a third. Our third corporate store would have been like our 9th or 10th store.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about on what made you guys ultimately decide to franchise the concept. You have the two company owned.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we had the one company owned. We were building the second one when we started to get the franchise docs already and everything. But the initial idea really just came. We knew we wanted to expand. The idea was, let's keep this operation really simple so we can expand. We didn't know necessarily how or what that would all entail.
Right.
But we just had, what we did know is we had a lot of people coming in saying, is this a franchise? This a franchise? Which a lot of people have that same story. People are asking you, is it a franchise? And then one day you're like, no, but maybe it should be.
Right.
And so we went from there, and we were like, okay, well, what do we need to be a franchise? We did our research, and then a few months later, we started the process of drafting up an FTD, ops manual, getting all of our ducks in a row, so to speak, with the documentation and everything, and just started reaching out to people that were already asking about opening a franchise. We had a lot of organic lead generation. Almost no, yeah.
That's actually one of the most, common things that people ask about when they're starting to franchise. Like, how am I going to find my first franchisees?
Yeah.
And typically, it's exactly that. It's organic.
Yeah.
It's current customers that say, I would love to open one of these.
Usually that was the case. Existing customers are just people looking up acai bowl franchise on Google, and we had some decent SEO at the time. Maybe we weren't competing with that many people, but we were coming up pretty high on the Google search results. Nice. So we were getting a lot of emails even before we had the program set up or the page on the website. So
I've been doing this podcast since July of 2023, and I've talked to a number of new franchisors that just started in the last few years. I am amazed at the amount of new franchisors that started in the magical year of 2020, and you are yet another one. Unbelievable. Now, the timing might not have been ideal feeling at the time, but I understand you started introducing delivery when you started franchising, right?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We didn't have a delivery. I mean, a lot of the pandemic, obviously, it was a common theme. Like, it pushed so many people maybe a few years further than they were at the time, and just a little farther into the future. So with the pandemic, definitely the biggest thing that came out of that was, an initial slump in sales, huge slump, obviously, and then we're like, well, where are we going to meet these customers? These delivery platforms were really already there, but they were starting to be heavily utilized.
Right.
And so we started with those, and pretty soon it was making up 25-30% of our business, and during the pandemic even higher. And this was all incremental. It was a lot of people that weren't coming to us already. We were having, we've got customers that have eaten there hundreds of times. We'll get they send you a thing that says this is the 100th time ordering from you, and we've never seen this person. They've never been in the store. So it was, at the time, it was crazy. We didn't know that that this would be something that people would order for delivery, but it was, and to this day, it's a huge thing for us.
The pandemic was a blessing in disguise for a lot of companies.
It showed us, showed us how resilient the business model is, how far down you can scale if you need to. Just a lot of things. Taught us a lot of important lessons.
For sure. And so then you start franchising in 2020, and so now you've got this new challenge, like, oh my gosh, now I got to hope that people want to buy this franchise from me here starting out in 2020. What was life like as a brand new franchisor when you were first getting ready to make that offering?
So we had sold a couple of franchises before. We had started selling them right before we were opening our first franchise in 2020. So we opened our first one that summer, so June of 2020, which was right about the time March, April, May for us were rough. We're very scary. Sure. So obviously we had these franchisees towards the end of their build out, two or three of them. And they were, obviously panicking a little bit.
I was saying, was everybody freaking out?
Yeah, because especially...
How do you calm that storm?
It's, you just hang in there. Like, we were starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit. March and April and May were a little grim, so those months were scary. But by June, we were back to even from the year before. July was even slightly up. By the time we were opening that first franchise, our sales in our corporate store were slightly up. And by August, they were up 40% from the prior year.
You guys must be like, what is going on?
It was a huge deal. And that was a lot of those delivery customers and just people in Florida, people coming back into the stores around that time. And just that delivery service not disappearing, that was staying there. So, and it was different. It was different from our in-store customer. So it was fine. By the time they were opening, everything was back to, at least what they had signed on to. And it went very well. Yeah.
What's delivery percentage look like now versus where it was during
It
the
depends on
pandemic?
the store. So like that Cape Coral store that I mentioned in a different kind of market, very a lot of people moving, a lot of businesses nearby, people ordering, for lunch, that'll be closer to 30%. And in a different kind of store, maybe in a plaza with not as many businesses and workers, that might be around 20, but still it's high. Definitely makes up a good portion.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. So since 2020, let's see, you have 13 franchise locations. You're in 5 states.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Tell me about sort of the franchise journey. So now what's life been like now as this franchisor with, you cleared the first dozen franchises. That's pretty significant.
Yeah. And we have some great partners. That's super lucky, because it could have been easy to not, given where we started from, and you hear that story a lot. It's so important to pick the right people. We got very lucky in a sense. We were talking to these people and saying, would this be somebody we want to work with? We're really asking ourselves that question.
Right.
And luckily we ended up with a lot of really great partners. So it worked out well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not everybody gets lucky.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
What did you guys determine were the right, who was the right person? Like, what were some of the traits that person needed to have to come aboard with you guys?
Well, willingness to collaborate and learn, of course, early on. Now it's, the systems are a lot more established now, so it's now willingness to follow the system. But we do like to collaborate. We look at our franchise like collaborative partners. So just a willingness to work with us and, understand we're an emerging brand. So, we were building a lot of those systems, and we got some great people who like to collaborate. So it's just an open-mindedness, willing to learn.
That is key, because having that vulnerability as a co-founder, it's okay to say, I don't know everything. We're doing this together. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And people are much more forgiving. They're much more flexible than coming off as a brand new franchise saying, I know everything. I have everything in place, because that's not true. We don't. And sometimes we really think we've got everything in place, but we come to find out very quickly that we don't, because it's different having a couple of company-owned locations versus supporting franchisees, and especially in different markets, right?
Yeah.
Have you found that there's been a different flavor, or not a different flavor, but different demand of menu items geographically?
Yeah, we're finding we generally try to keep it the same.
Sure.
But every now and then there's the need arises, like, hey, it gets really cold here. Maybe we can look into something, something hot or some soup. We're open to these ideas. It does, when you have 16 locations, even at that small scale, it is difficult, because then you have to draw the line somewhere, because eventually people want to, well, can I add this? Can I add this? But we typically pick something, we say, okay, we're willing to look into this. And then we make it available. We say, okay, everybody, if you're interested in this, it just has to be make sense as an add-on.
Sure.
You see too many people try to be everything to everyone, and people typically come to you for one or two things, and they come to you for a reason, basically.
What's life been like now as a franchisor with 12 units?
Well, it's very different. It's very different than running the business. That's for sure. Two completely separate things, and that's not everybody understands it's a completely different thing dealing with as a franchisor versus running our core business, which would be the acai bowls. I'd say it's great. I mean, I love solving these problems and doing this role. It's great.
Yeah, well, you learned very quickly that you were really being in the franchise business is totally different than the acai bowl business.
Totally different. Yeah, yeah. It's like of course, completely different. And yeah, that's not something everybody realizes. It's like, acai bowl shop, but really franchise support center and that kind of thing. Sure.
What do you think it takes in building that solid foundation, especially in those first few units? What were some of the challenges? Now, obviously, pandemic aside, what are some of those things that you felt like you really needed to improve on?
I'd say, getting everybody on the same page and complying with everything. It can be tricky. Obviously, making sure everything is standard across the board, from the recipe point of view and also from the branding, because it's hard to, only have a few units and preach how important the brand is, because they're in different states. It's really we don't have a lot of cross customers going, but it's still very important that it is the same, Sure. Even just to draw that line in the sand and say, this is what we are. And, so that's challenging to get people to buy into that. Can be difficult, but, like I said, we have great partners. Everybody sees that, and everybody is invested in the same goal. We all want to grow. We all want to and this is kind of what we need to do to get there. So it's a challenge for sure, though.
Yeah. Well, the goal is to, act like a national brand from the very beginning,
yeah, exactly,
right?
Exactly.
I always thought, Ben, when I was running my brand earlier on, I got some great advice, and that was when I was going to add products or services onto my concept, it was to remember that, yes, you can do this now when you're only a dozen locations, but is this something that I can keep up when I have 100 locations? And that kind of came in, that question would enter my mind before I made some strategic moves.
Oh, yeah. And that's good great to have that mindset from the beginning.
Yeah, because let's face it, it's easy to say, sure, go ahead and do that. Add that soup up in the Northeast. And, add things. And it's very hard, though, to call things back. Once you've given the ability to do things, adding rules that you didn't have beforehand becomes a challenge.
Because it's more of just like an explanation at the time that it's being asked. It's like, well, we want to go in this direction. But when you're actually calling something back, it's a much bigger deal. Nobody wants to be giving things back.
Of course.
That's tough.
At the same time, would you agree that your first dozen franchisees, they are more of a risk taker, right?
Exactly. So it is a line. Like you don't want to. We definitely don't say no to everything. There are certain things that make sense, and it's like, well, you try it out. That's we have some people that do, and that's the important thing about these initial partners, that they are helping you develop the concept. The concept didn't just start out the way that it's to what it's become. We're happy with where we're at, but definitely a lot of that credit needs to be given to our franchisees who are going out and testing things, and so it is a fine line, though.
Yeah. The truth is, they're always going to be near and dear to your heart. Every franchisee is important. The first 10, 20, man, you just don't ever forget them. You remember all of them. You remember the conversations. You remember the challenges you had together, some of the meetings. Yeah. You'll look back and go, I can't even believe this was a challenge back in the day. Yeah. Like, it's so crazy. Yeah. But exactly, it'll be for some great memories, and you guys will be laughing about things years from now about some of the conversations you had in the quote unquote early years. Yeah. What does training look like for you guys?
So right now we're doing we typically do the corporate training. So they'll come out a couple weeks before they're opening, spend a few days with us, and that can range from 2 to 4 days, and then a mix of classroom and actual preparation and working out the recipes and stuff. And then we'll go out to the location for about a week, sometimes a little longer. It just depends on the franchisee. And, if it's our first, we have a couple of multi-unit franchises. So if we're going back a second time, we might, they might feel more comfortable after a week. Whereas a new franchisee might stay 10 days or so. And I bring typically 1 or 2 staff members, some corporate. We have a couple of people that help manage our corporate stores and that come help train. And so we'll spend about a week there. And then ongoing support is just a phone call away. Anybody who needs that help. We're still very early. You can get me on my cell. Yeah.
You said you have a couple of multi-unit franchisees already?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, we have a few.
That's a great testament to your brand.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been great.
And so what are your thoughts on the growth of single unit versus multi-unit?
So it depends. We're finding obviously it's easier to support a single unit franchise closer to home. So in Florida, we're definitely super open. We're open to it anywhere. It depends all the right fit in that. But typically outside of Florida, we're looking for a multi-unit commitment, an area developer. And then inside Florida, we would be more open to, we like single unit franchisees. Yeah. In Florida, it's great. It's a lot easier. But then supply chain and things, it becomes a little more difficult. But we have no direct preference to either. We like to work with both.
Yeah, and certainly in your kind of brand, I would think if you're going to go nationwide, is that your aspirations?
Yeah, we're super focused on the Southeast right now, mostly Florida, like I said. But yeah, we do. We in terms of future franchise growth, we're in a few states and great partners in those states, and so that's definitely a long-term goal, though, of course.
Great. And of course, having franchisees that own multi-units is easier to support, of course, less people.
Of course.
But like you said, if there's single unit owners in Florida, they're more local.
Yeah, and they have their pros. I mean, it's pros and cons too. With either single unit franchises are great. They're right. A lot of times they'll be super dedicated, working in their stores and running. I mean, all our franchises do a great job. Honestly, we really don't. They do a great job keeping the stores, but somebody who's in their store all the time can do a great job keeping the place up to standard. So
Are they typically owner operated or manager operated?
It depends. It's a mixture of the two, for sure. We definitely have some that are more in their stores, but a lot that are, because we have a few that are signed up for multiple units or that already have, a few units, and they're using managers to manage that. Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in the performance of locations, manager operated versus owner operated?
It's a little early to tell, honestly. So no, I haven't noticed a huge difference between. It's more geographic where we're noticing differences, and that's something that we're starting to get a lot more into is data and where are we putting the, getting very, very meticulous about where we put our stores. We clearly have a prototype that works and works very well in certain markets. And so, yeah, but I would say not necessarily tied to the manager or owner operator.
Okay. How does technology play a role in your company?
So customer facing, we've got the app, website, and obviously all the stuff that you just need these days to run a brand, loyalty program and that kind of thing. And they've been great. That's awesome. But then business facing, you've got a ton of different things. The something that combines all of our delivery service orders, for example, and then the point of sale system, the menu screens that we can turn off remotely and, set timers to put certain things up there and all kinds of stuff that help the business actually run day to day.
Where did you find all these things? So, for example,
over time, yeah, over time, because it didn't start that way.
Yeah.
None of it. We had none of it when we started. It was just a standard. The point of sale was all we really had
to
start. We even had our menu screens loaded. Our menu screens were actually not even on a TV. They were just physical, like a lot of places. Then they were like flash drives, and so we just worked up to a lot of this stuff, and still working on it, honestly.
Oh yeah. And now dynamically you can make changes now.
Yeah. You move to you move towards that full automation and more robust and dynamic and
right. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So how do you think about differentiating yourself? There's like 4,000 franchisors that are out there. So we're all, everybody's competing for the same client.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you guys are doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, specifically being in health food, fast casual, I like that sector a lot. So that's a differentiation in itself. It's already a growing market. It's healthy. And then within that, you've got the acai bowls. And those are already, they're unique and it's a different thing. And, we're obviously up against a lot of competition, but less than a pizza place or something like that. So there's that. And then within that, even the acai bowl sector, like I was saying, we try to be simpler, around ordering. We try to be a little more wide reaching in our menu and include, just make it very clear this is a meal replacement that can be eaten for lunch, breakfast, dinner. It's not to be substituted for ice cream. It's not that,
Right.
And so just being very clear about this is our brand. We're a competitor to the, to Chipotle's and Paneras of the world.
Sure. Who does franchise development for you guys? Do you guys do it in-house? Do you outsource it?
No, yeah, we do it in-house. I handle pretty much all of it.
How have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I love it. I do. We obviously concern ourselves a lot with who we're working with. So I'm very hands-on when it comes to the franchise development.
Ben, there's so many, there's a couple different schools of thought on franchise development and who does it. I personally love when I hear that a founder or co-founder is doing the franchise dev early on. I know it's, eventually it's going to outgrow you. You're going to need to be in other roles. But I do love when I hear that founders are doing it, because when I did it, I loved it because I got to really hear what candidates were asking.
Yeah.
And I feel like I needed to know. And I also felt like I had a much deeper connection with the candidates. And when they came in, I had that rapport with them. It was different than in the later years for me when I had somebody in FranDev and then they would come into Discover Day. They would meet me, the founder, and I sit down at Discover Day and I kind of tell them the story. It was just different. I just felt like it was a much richer relationship that I had with them early on. It's a lot of work, but what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Especially when we're talking about these early franchises being so important, these are going to be the people that help shape the brand, and it's your brand. So you have to, if they're going to be helping you shape it, you should be selecting them.
Right.
So that's my take on it. I know, I've definitely spoken to a lot of people in franchising, and it does seem to be very split, evenly. Like, you need to automate this process, and then half people are saying you need to be in front of this process. So, I'm definitely the latter.
I think and it's a combination too, right? We have to automate the process. But
yes, exactly.
Right, but we like being involved early on.
Exactly.
At the same time, if there is an emerging founder that's listening to this podcast and they're not somebody that has a sales background or is comfortable in sales, would you agree they probably shouldn't be doing it?
Yes.
Though?
Yeah, that's a good
Let's
point.
couch that, right?
Yeah.
Because you and I are comfortable in selling.
Yeah.
So it was fine for us, but not everybody should be selling.
Yeah, that is true. It is true. It probably does make sense in a lot of cases. Yeah.
Yes. Most of the founders, though, that we talk with are more charismatic. That's probably why they're the founder. They're maybe a little more charismatic, outgoing, love talking about the brand. And I just don't think there's anybody that can replace the founder when it comes to talking about the brand on how we really got started, as opposed to somebody else telling your story.
Yeah, people love the enthusiasm. People love to hear the enthusiasm. They're enthusiastic too. These, people buying into an emerging franchise, like you said, they're risk takers.
Right.
They're doing it because they're passionate about this brand and they love it. So that's, they like to hear that mirrored back. So
For sure.
it's good.
So in the nearly 4 years now you've been franchising, what's been the biggest surprise that you've seen?
Well, I mean, we were, there's not been a ton of huge surprise. I would say it's a lot of what I thought. I guess I wasn't expecting the community to be so big and how willing people are to share what they've learned in franchising. We weren't, 100% familiar with everything franchising. Obviously,
Sure.
like I said, it's been very, very interesting how big this community is, because you wouldn't know. A lot of people look at franchise and think restaurants, right? McDonald's and this stuff. But getting into it, you see, everything can be franchised. Even look at your business, and that's not something 6 years ago you could have told me would be most of the things I've seen. And so being at like the conference, like you mentioned, the New Orleans conference.
Yeah, you were at the
IFA.
Emerging Franchise Conference.
Yeah. So I was shocked at how much information is out there and how willing other founders are and other people in franchising are to share what they've learned with you. And that's been awesome.
Was that the first franchise conference you'd been to?
Yeah.
I bet you wish you had gone in the first year.
Yeah. If you ask me, if you ask me later what I would
Do all over again?
It would be do that earlier. 100%.
There's
Get
nothing
involved
like
as
it.
early as you can, and there's just a huge wealth of knowledge out there, and I love that. I mean, we were obviously going into it, we were well read, and we were looking up a lot of this. What do we need to know going into this? But just to know that there are people that are out there that are completely willing to share with you everything they know, and I hope to be able to give that back someday. But it's huge. Yeah, it's great.
Franchising
Get involved with that as early as you can.
Yeah, there's always a role for somebody in franchising to to give back. Did you leave New Orleans at the Emerging Conference with sort of like a couple of things like on your to-do list or on your goals? What were some of the?
I had a notebook that was it took me like 3 days to condense all my notes from that conference, and I did. I went on my computer and it was like a 30-page document.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy how much.
Would you be willing to share maybe some of the big takeaways or some of the things that you said?
Yeah.
Here's what we need to do next.
Yeah, I mean, it was systems. It's huge, and that was That was very, very. That was obvious. It was get these systems in place, and we have our systems, of course, but in an emerging franchise, that's you don't know what you don't know in a lot of cases, and so just realizing that these processes need to be automated. You work with the best people that you can find. When you're a lean team, you don't have a lot of bandwidth. You have to find these people that are gonna put you in that are gonna do the right thing for you. And so there was that. There's systems. There's the candidates, which we already knew. Of course, we want to be working with the best people, but it is heavily emphasized and they will repeat it at these conferences, obviously, to not just sell a franchise to anybody who can afford to buy one, obviously. Right. So that's a huge thing. So much stuff. So much.
Yeah. Well, growing as a franchisor in terms of number of people in your team and having more bench strength is obviously where you're gonna end up going.
Yeah.
How many people are part of your team now?
So it's still me and my partner, Van, doing a lot of it. We recently brought in somebody with a lot of senior experience in franchising to help with strategy. We call him Chief Strategy Officer. He's been great, huge help. And then we have, like I mentioned, a couple people that work in our corporate stores that help with administrative and certain things like recipe guides and charts and things like that, and then come out and help train the stores and that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
You're running lean and mean right now.
Very.
That's great. What are you guys most proud of?
Oh, man. I mean, did I say franchisees yet?
Yeah.
I would say, yeah. The franchisees are great. Our acai, our main product. I'm very proud of our product, of course.
I'm looking forward to you opening a location here in Tampa.
Enough.
You're like surrounding all of Tampa with locations around Florida.
Yeah.
You're gonna be.
Oh, we'll be here soon enough. It's the next domino to fall. This and Miami, we really want to get into.
Yeah, probably a great market.
Oh my gosh. I bet.
What's your vision for the company? Have you guys talked about how many locations we think we can grow this thing out to?
Yeah, we would be happy with at a lot of different numbers. I mean, we don't need to. We're not in like a massive rush to get to 100, 500, any number of locations. It's all about working with the right people, of course. But yeah, we'll open as many as they'll let us.
Yeah.
as long as we're being well received where we open, we're going to keep opening them. And, even international someday. Who knows?
Cool. How do you guys decide on where territory, or I should say how big a territory is or how close they are to one another?
Well, in our FTD, it's stipulated. Obviously, that changes based on whether it's in a city or where it is. But we're getting a lot more meticulous about this now, like I mentioned, with, leaning on real estate partners and data and figuring out territories like that. But no, we have a few locations in Southwest Florida, so it's a bit of a question there. Where are these? But outside of that, it was just there's not that many other people nearby, so it was pretty easy and not super well thought out. I'll say.
Of course,
yeah.
I'm glad you admitted that. Yeah. I would have admitted that for me too.
Yeah.
The biggest mistake I made
was
a few years in. This was so short-sighted, but I'm gonna admit this. It was a couple years in, and we got a call from a guy in Hawaii that said, I want to buy a franchise. And so somebody in my office said to me, well, we need to design the territory. And you know what I said to the person in my office? Are you kidding me? We got a call from somebody in Hawaii. I'm probably never going to get another call. Give him all of Honolulu.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, today, and I love Roger. He's a great franchisee for I9 Sports, but he has a massive business, as you could probably imagine. He has it should be several territories, but it was because I was back in the day going, are you kidding? I was just so excited. Somebody called from Hawaii. I'm like, give him the whole island.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Don't do as I did for sure.
Yeah. We definitely were more generous with that at the beginning. So
yeah.
It is now. It's it's a lot more based on the trade areas and there's data that there's firms that will tell you this is where you need to be putting your locations.
That changes everything. I've actually just talked about this on a recent episode of how just franchising has changed, like the access you have as an emerging franchisor. That really it was around, but it was more affordable for the big guys 20 years ago.
Right.
And now like having that franchise territory development where there's a lot of different programs out there.
Yeah.
But using the technology where you're, kind of matching where you have existing locations and those demographics to be able to replicate that throughout the country, that's a game changer. You don't make the same mistakes that a franchisor like me made 20 years ago when I get a call from somebody in, the Midwest and I go, well, the population matches.
Yeah.
That's all we went on. You went on the population. You didn't go on the psychodemographics, which obviously have been available for a long time.
Data, it's insane what you can learn from data.
We are as much in the data business as we are in any other business. Everything has got to be data driven. Of course, still we have that human touch. We still have that connection with our franchisees, but so many of the decisions we make are not just, they can't be on the gut instinct, or they can't be on the, well, I got a call from a guy in Hawaii. That's never going to happen again. So give them the whole thing.
Or you at least need to back up what you're already, maybe an opinion with some data and say, okay, this is just affirming what I already knew to be true. But
exactly. Yeah. So when somebody calls you interested in buying a franchise, what's a piece of advice that you give them when that's talking about like researching and you want to kind of send them on their way and doing what, their due diligence?
Yeah. I say, make sure this is the right fit for you, that franchising in general, the Bahia Bowls, even more, specifically, but do your due diligence on the FTD, read through everything, consult an attorney, and then think and give some thought into where you're going to want to put a location. Give us a few options that you have. We're going to tell you what we think. We're very involved in the locations, of course, like we just discussed, but, and then go, just give some serious thought into how you want to finance this, what route you're going to take, and do your due diligence.
Yeah, because we don't want to, we're not trying to force them into the concept. That's what the worst thing we could do, right, is trying to talk them into the concept.
Oh, yeah. If they need to be talked into it, then
it's bad. Mm-hmm. I had this couple one time that came to my office in Discovery Day, and the husband wanted to open a I9 Sports franchise in the worst possible way. Believe it or not, it was in Southwest Florida. It was in the Fort Myers area, is where they were from. Yeah. And he came in with his wife, and she was not on board. She did not want him to do it. He wanted to do it. And I have them sitting, what we did in our Discovery Day is, after we did the whole thing in our conference room in different people in my office would come in and talk, and we do the whole presentation. Typically at the end of the Discovery Day, you'd come into my office and I would sit down with them one-on-one, and I never sold them a franchise. I would never like get it. I didn't ask for a deposit or anything. It was more like, how did things go? What did you think? What questions you have for me here at the end? And so I'm sitting across from this husband and wife, and the wife she was like lukewarm to the whole thing. And this guy was like jumping out of his skin to buy this. And I remember saying to the wife, I said, look, I could tell you're not on board with this. And because of that, I don't think we should move forward.
Yeah. And
it was like the worst thing I could have said, because now, what do you think happened? Now she wants it for him. And she goes, no, this is his deal. He wants to do this. She was scared in just general. It wasn't about my concept. Sure. She was scared about them going into business because her family had she learned at an early age that going to business was a bad thing, that it was too risky.
Yeah.
So she was just, in general, anti-business.
Would have been any franchise,
So what do you think happened was, I said to her, look, you guys are really nice people. I know he wants this, but here's what's going to happen. He's going to have a challenge, right? And when you're starting out a business, you have challenges, and you're going to have rough days, and you're going to have good days and bad days. But what's going to happen is, when he runs into an obstacle, you're going to say to him, I told you so.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I don't think we should move forward. Well, that was like the worst thing I could have said, because now she wants this franchise for him more than anything else. And I'm new, I'm starting out. And what did I do? I took their money. I took them on. He lasted a year.
Oh, gosh.
And he went out of business because he insisted, as it turned out, he insisted on opening within his territory in areas that would not, there wasn't enough kids. And no matter what we told them, see, in our business that wasn't retail, you can open up locations within your territory wherever you want. Yeah. We could try to convince you with all the data. Look, this is where the kids are. Here's where the money is. This is where you need to open. But it taught me a very valuable lesson. I knew not to sell them that franchise.
Yeah, go with your gut. Yeah.
Go with my gut, and I didn't do it. I went against my gut because this lady, I guess what they call the takeaway close. I wasn't trying the takeaway close, where I'm taking the opportunity away and now she wants it more. I was
inadvertently, maybe. Yeah.
And I was sincere. I didn't want to do this, but this is a challenge that we have in franchising.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, trust your gut for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyway, go back to thinking what I was saying earlier about, the advice that we give and doing the due diligence, because we don't want to talk them into something, because this is in our case, it's a 10-year relationship. And if we have a failure, it looks terrible, obviously in the FDD, but worse, then they're not going to validate.
Yeah, and it gets compared to marriage a lot. You hear that a lot at the conference too, and it's really true.
And any marriage, right? We're going to go through periods of challenges. Yeah. I'd say one of the hardest things, right, is that getting that franchisee through the grind. Because we go through the honeymoon period, right? Do your franchisees leave training all super excited?
Sure.
And then what happens about 2 years in, they start going, okay, how am I going to grow this thing? They start to see some of the cracks they have with their own employees, and now we're finding ourselves, what can we do to help them manage their business better?
Challenges, of course.
Yeah.
As in any business, it's going to have those. But
True.
Yeah. So absolutely.
When your franchisees think about opening a second location, have you guys thought about what are some of the criteria that they need to have before they're allowed to open a second or third location?
Well, at this stage, we know our franchises really well. Typically, the ones that want to open a second store are the ones that are already doing very well in the first store and that we're happy with. They're happy with us. So we haven't run into having to really define the criteria that's needed. But yeah, of course, as we start, moving along and we've got a lot of people, hopefully, asking to open second locations and third locations, then we're going to need to clearly define. But yeah, for now, it's typically our best performers who are, looking to expand. They do a great job. We have a good relationship.
Sure.
So
makes it easier to award franchises to future people when you have multi-unit franchisees this early in the process.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate with that.
Yeah,
I'll tell you.
for sure. Cool. If someone was interested in learning more about your franchise opportunity, where would they go?
Well, on our website, you'll find our franchise page, and it's got some info on there. Submit an inquiry, and I'll get back to you, and we'll have a chat. That's how we're doing it right now.
So it's BahiaBowls.com?
Yes. Yep, BahiaBowls.com.
Awesome. Very nice. So I finish every podcast with the tip jar because, as we talked about earlier, the franchise community is so generous. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm new into franchising and I want to franchise my concept, and I came to you, what would be a piece of advice that you'd give me before I jump in?
Well, I think, a lot of the advice is so obvious, and there's so much. You hear it a lot. It's get your ducks in a row, be organized, be systematic about everything you do. I guess the best advice, just listen to what everybody, all the things that you hear the most is just actually, it's very true. I mean, be systematic in the way you do things. If you're one store and you want to franchise, document every single aspect of the business, even if you don't think it's important. Document what you did, how you did it. And if you see something glaringly obvious in the process that could be better, you fix it before you start franchising. And you do all of these things. And you get really systematic. You keep all your documents. How do you make, even if you remember that you've been doing this maybe for a while and you know how to do it because it's ingrained in your head, but you have to be teaching it to somebody else how to do it. And then for them to be teaching it to their employees how to do it. So document everything, tap into that wealth of knowledge, like I said early on, IFA, and some of these conferences, if you can get to those, read, listen to podcasts like yours, and do everything you can to familiarize yourself with how it all works, and then be selective with your process. Work with people that you want to work with, and trust your gut. Don't sell a franchise to somebody that you don't think is going to be a good fit.
How much better were you as a franchisor as a result of opening that second company on location?
Oh, it was definitely a very important step. Can we replicate this concept, and can we replicate it in a different market, in a different format? And that's an important thing too.
Because you probably had some assumptions that you made after the first location that once you open the second one, especially like reducing the footprint.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Exactly. And, things had obviously changed in that time. We've made some efficiencies. So opening a second store, it's just good to, that first opening schedule and all of these things that we did, all the equipment, that's changed a decent amount from 1 to 2. So we had to refine a lot of this stuff, and it was good that we did that before, so, because that's ultimately the process that you use, it's copy and paste. So you need to make sure it's good copy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate you being on the show. I wish you all the continued success with Bahia Bowls, and hopefully you guys come to Tampa soon.
Thank you. Yeah, we sure will.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.